G'day, welcome back to Foley Down Under. So this is part 2, episode 2. You can see I'm in a different room at the moment, editing this as I go along. And so this time we're going to talk about the pits and what my pits are made out of. I'll show you a few images like these ones here of all the different setups that I have. So you can see there's a section here with some tiles and some carpet layers, and you have to have different thicknesses of carpet with different underlays underneath, or just a mat type of arrangement. We've got pavers, then we've got a bush kind of setting here, which is typical Australian bush really, which is lots of sticks and rocks and can be quite rough, and I just place that as I need it. We've got the grass set up, which we'll talk about later on as well. We have steel surfaces we need to walk on, and I change those as I need them. But this one here is a steel plate, which was actually a steel packing pallet, which I managed to score, and that works quite well. And I can lift, put that up on blocks if I want to, or make it lower, depending on the sound that I'm after. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start talking about the dirt pits first, and I'm going to have a immediate change of clothes, t-shirt, and enjoy. For me, I put my dirt for the outside things. I put all my dirt straight onto the concrete, and it doesn't have to be that thick, depending on what's in it. But general dirt with some grass or a bit of straw or shredded paper or something like that, just to give it a softer texture for grass and lawn. I find that works very well. Now, for the actual surrounds around the pit, preferably if you can get away without having any barriers, if your room's large enough, then that's great, because quite often the edge of the pits is what causes most of the drama, particularly if they are a lightweight wood. Though you will hear the resonance of the wood because the dirt, it will be touching it. If you have to have wood, use really heavy duty. I've got sections in my room which are wood. They are glued down to the concrete, but where the dirt does touch the wood, I'm using a foam matting, kind of like what you'd use for camping, like a rollout or a yoga mat type of material. Just cut that in strips, and that's stuck to the wood, and that just gives a little bit of a buffer, and it takes away that timber sound that you might be getting from your outside footstep sounds. Right, now some of the other pit or the surfaces we need are basic things like wood. I've got 2 different types of wood surfaces which I use inside. So we've got a nice hardwood, a polished hardwood surface, and a softer, still a polished surface. And then there's other older bits of wood which are put together, which you can use for piers, more old front verandas of old houses and things like that. Some of them have got a little bit of a creak in them. It doesn't matter if your boards don't creak. It's probably easier to add a creak in where you want it, rather than having the creaks happen every step that you're walking. Now with my wooden floors, you can see there's a little spacer. Now I got these built by a friend of mine who's a carpenter, and what that means is I can actually start lifting those floors up and down. So one floor will fit perfectly on top of another floor, which gives me height and a lot more depth underneath. I can put that spacer in, and that gives me more height. So I can put a microphone underneath the floorboards if I want to do that. So we had that built specifically for the Narnia film, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, for all the boat footsteps. Because the boat is such a huge, big wooden structure, we needed some height and some size just to get the weight of the feet on the deck. So that's what we did with that. All right, as I mentioned before, we need grass. Now, obviously we can't grow grass or lawn in our rooms. On some films I have gone out and just bought short lengths of instant turf and used that, but it doesn't last very long at all. It'll soon destroy itself, unless you've got a lot that you can keep changing over, like leave a piece outside, keep it watered and keep a turnover going of your instant turf. That can work okay, depending on what sort of a film you have. If you've got, you know, a big marching army or a big fight sequences on grass, it's not going to last very long. So I've used some very good fake turf. It's quite good these days. You can buy the really long grass, not the short AstroTurf. That's no good unless you need a sound effect for AstroTurf. But the fake or replica lawn, that actually works pretty well. You also can add bits of soft straw. So you go to your store, your shop where you might buy your horse feed, and just buy a bale of straw, or even your garden type of straw. And I just put a little sprinkle of that on the top, and that works really nicely, just to give little deep patches of it when you're walking around on grass. One of the other surfaces we'll also use will be mud. Now, mud can be fun, but it can also be really messy. And once it dries out, it's actually hard to dig it all up and get rid of. So what I found the best thing to do is I have one empty pit, which is surrounded by old railway sleepers, and I only put it in when I need it. So I'll just have some thick garden plastic, black plastic or building plastic, the red stuff, heavy duty plastic, and I'll line it with that, and then I can put my mud in there, my dirt in there, add the water to it, mix it all up and make however kind of sloppy or thick mud that I actually need. Now that same idea with just lining a small area with plastic works well for shallow water walking as well. So if you just got a section where you only need maybe 2 or 3 inches of water to walk in, like the edge of a beach, where people are walking along the edge of a beach and they've just in the water every now and then, that works quite well. Just a little bit of shallow water, but it gives you a nice space to walk on. And if you want, you can fill that with some sand and then put your water on the top of that, so you've got that nice kind of soft sandy sound underneath your water. Now the good thing about having it all in the plastic is you can shovel a bit out if you need to, but if it's a real mess, just get somebody to help you, pull up the plastic, take the whole thing outside and tip it all out on the dirt and let it all dry out. All right, one of the other fun surfaces to use, or we have to have sometimes, is snow. And snow can be quite strange. You can have very powdery snow. It doesn't make a lot of noise when you walk in it. Or you can have really crunchy snow, which is kind of more icy. So my technique for snow is I use quite a coarse building sand, and I do the same thing as I mentioned before with the lined pit. I'll fill that full of a coarse building sand, and then keep adding water to that to get it into the right mix that you need for your snow. You can make it as deep as the height of your railway sleeper or whatever the surround is in your pit. The deeper the better really for that, because then you can get the deeper sounds if you really push your foot into the sand to make the snow sound. So there, that works very well for me. If you want to crunch it up a little bit, you can add a layer of things like even cat litter, just to crunch it up, or rice bubbles you can do, add a little bit of crunch, or just some small amounts of gravel on one end. Just kind of mix it up so you get a little bit of a crunch as your foot goes into it. You can either do it at the time or layer it, depending on the scene really. If everything's crunchy, if every foot is going to be crunchy, then it won't hurt to mix up the crunch at the same time. The other thing we have is ice, like crunchy icy roads, and I use the same thing. So for that I've used pavers, which are rough paving bricks, and then I put some water so they're always quite damp, and then just put a lot of grit over it. I might even use some rice bubbles on the top of that. You got to wait till they stop crackling sometimes, but just a bit of grit, and try and maybe cheat your shoe. Use a harder shoe if you really want it to crunch. If you're using a soft one, it might not sound very nice. So just play with your shoe. It might not be the right shoe for the actual character at the time, but it won't matter. If you're after a certain sound for that character in the snow, then choose the shoe which makes the sound that you want, not necessarily the shoe that the actor is actually wearing. Back to the snow. If you got that snow which has that real creaky sound, now a lot of people know about this, is corn flour works really well. So I've got a small leather pouch which is full of corn flour, and basically I just crush it with my hands, just like this. This is in the picture as we're going along. And not every single footstep, but every now and then there's a quieter one, and then again this comes into performance, and just put a lighter crunch and then a bigger crunch, just to vary it. The other thing that was quite good is when we're working on wooden decks and or concrete or any surface, and you might just have one or two shots where there's a small puddle of water. So what I found works very well to make that is either a piece of garden hose or some black dripper line, or something like that, that you can make in a circle, like this one here. And I get the old gaffer tape out, or the duct tape, whatever you can stick it down to, stick that onto the surface. Obviously it has to be a flat surface. And then you just fill it up with water, and it'll hold water long enough to make, it might leak out a little bit, but you'll get some good puddles out of it. Okay, I think that's pretty much coming to the end of this episode. I don't want to make them too long so people don't get bored and fall asleep, and there's not too much information to take in at once. So this is why I've split it all up over lots of episodes. But for now, if you have any questions, write them all down. You can watch this episode as many times as you like on the server, on the streaming service. Make some notes. If you have any questions, write them down for the Q&A we'll have a bit later. I'll email out the date of that one for everybody. If anyone has any pictures that they want to email through to me, that's fine. If you have a picture of your room or something you want to point out and say, do you think this is a good idea? Or I'm having this issue with my surface, or something like that. I can't get in the room and have a listen to it, but apart from I'd love to see everybody's Foley room and where they work, I might be able to point you in the right direction for something. So do feel free to send in anything like that, and hopefully I can be of some help. Next week we're up to episode 3, and we're going to get into some more technical things to do with microphones, miking techniques, guide track monitoring, and that kind of stuff. It's going to be more interesting for the techie kind of guys. Bring along your Foley mixer if he or she wants to have a listen, or just relay the message next week. Until then, keep those questions coming in, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.